The great assembly hall floated in the endless darkness of space, like a monument to galactic power. Its colossal structure stretched for kilometers, large enough to house the representatives of 847 civilizations. Inside, advanced atmospheric systems worked constantly, blending hundreds of different gases into a carefully balanced environment capable of sustaining nearly every known species. The walls shimmered with alien metals worth entire planetary economies. Massive holographic displays floated overhead, projecting star maps, trade routes, and treaties that governed half the galaxy. This was the center of civilization, the heart of galactic law, the place where justice was supposed to live. Ambassador Ji-won Park no longer believed that. She sat quietly in the human delegation section. Her hands rested calmly on the polished table. Her dark diplomatic uniform was immaculate. Her expression was composed. But beneath that calm exterior, rage burned like a star on the verge of collapse. Beside her, two fellow diplomats shifted nervously. Neither spoke. Neither needed to. The tension in the room felt alive. Something was coming. Everyone could feel it. Across the assembly sat Councillor Therax. The reptilian politician lounged comfortably in his elevated seat. His emerald scales gleamed beneath the chamber lights. A cruel smile twisted across his narrow face. For years, he had opposed every human petition, every investigation, every request for protection. And somehow, he always seemed to enjoy it. At the center platform, High Arbiter Velkron slowly rose. The crystalline leader towered above the delegates. Light fractured through his transparent body, scattering rainbow reflections across the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. The human delegation has requested time to present evidence. His tone suggested he already regretted allowing it. You may proceed. Ji-won stood. With a simple gesture, she activated the chamber display. Images appeared above the assembly. Peaceful human colonies, families, research facilities, schools, cities built beneath alien suns. Then the images changed. The room grew quieter. Burned settlements, collapsed structures, bodies drifting silently through vacuum, children's toys floating among twisted debris. For the first time, several delegates looked uncomfortable. For 15 cycles, Jafwan began. Her voice was steady, controlled. For 15 cycles, humanity has brought these attacks before this council. A new image appeared. Another destroyed colony. Another massacre. For 15 cycles, we have been ignored. Silence spread across the hall. The corporations licensed by this council have attacked our worlds. Another image. They have stolen our resources. Another. They have murdered our citizens. A ripple of whispers moved through the assembly. Then came a familiar sound. Laughter. Therax. The reptilian counselor leaned back and released a low, hissing chuckle. The human speaks of violations. His yellow eyes narrowed, yet offers no evidence linking these incidents to council involvement. Several delegates nodded. These are business disputes. Therax spread his claws. Nothing more. The smile returned. Perhaps if humanity spent less time complaining and more time learning its place, such misunderstandings would not occur. A few delegates laughed. Others looked away. Ji-won felt her jaw tighten, but she continued. We possess transaction records. New files appeared above the chamber. Financial transfers. Encrypted communications. Military contracts. Authorization signatures. We possess communication logs. Another display. We possess orders directly linking council-backed corporations to deliberate attacks against civilian populations. A counselor from the Merchant Collective clicked his mandibles. Evidence can be fabricated. Another delegate raised a limb. Your species is young. A third joined in. Emotional. Several voices followed. Impulsive. Inexperienced. Perhaps you simply misunderstand galactic commerce. The assembly relaxed. The accusations rolled through the hall like routine procedure. Just another day. Just another human complaint. Ji-won changed the display again. This time the chamber fell silent. A beautiful colony world appeared. New Jew. Population 50,000. Families walked through parks. Children played beneath blue skies. Farmers worked fertile fields. A thriving world. Then the image changed. Gasps echoed through the assembly. The city was gone. The parks were gone. The schools were gone. Only craters remained. Smoke, fire, death. The destruction was less than 24 hours old. This was New Jew. Jiwan's voice became quieter. Far more dangerous. Population 50,000. The images zoomed closer. Emergency responders. Burned streets. Bodies. This colony was destroyed 36 hours ago. A pause. We traced the weapons to Solian military contractors. Her eyes locked onto Therax. Your contractors. The reptilian counselor barely reacted. He simply waved one claw dismissively. If true, it is regrettable. A few delegates nodded. Space is dangerous. More nods. Perhaps they entered disputed territory. A shrug. Perhaps they failed to pay proper docking fees. Jiwan stared at him in disbelief. There are many possible explanations. The silence that followed felt poisonous. 3,000 civilians died. For the first time, emotion cracked through her voice. The room became still. 1,000 of them were children. Therax didn't even blink. I am certain the appropriate insurance claims will be processed. Several delegates looked uncomfortable. Others pretended not to hear. In 6 to 8 cycles, the reptilian folded his claws, as required by standard procedure. Jiwan felt something inside her break. The Council has more important concerns than every unfortunate incident involving every minor species. Minor species. The words struck harder than any weapon. The chamber became deathly quiet. Then, her communicator vibrated. One short message. She glanced down. Her blood turned cold. Another research station. Destroyed. 3,000 more dead. 6,000 human lives erased in 48 hours. And the Council called it a minor incident. Jiwan slowly lifted her gaze. She looked around the assembly. 847 species. Thousands of years of wisdom. Thousands of years of civilization. And not one of them cared. Not one. Human lives meant nothing to them. Human worlds meant nothing. Humanity itself meant nothing. A lesser race. A disposable race. A race expected to remain grateful for scraps. Jiwan took a slow breath. She thought of Earth. She thought of her daughter. She thought of the fleets waiting beyond Council space. She thought of the plans humanity had spent decades preparing. Plans they prayed would never be needed. Then she looked at the Council and made her decision. Then we are done here. Her voice was soft. Yet somehow, every delegate heard it. High Arbiter Velkron leaned forward. The colors inside his crystal body shifted. Excuse me? Jiwan stood straighter. The anger was gone, replaced by certainty. Humanity withdraws from this council. The chamber froze. Every translator stopped. Every delegate stared. We are terminating all diplomatic relations. The silence deepened. We will no longer participate in your assemblies. A few delegates rose from their seats. We will no longer recognize your laws. More stood. Your treaties. Shock spread through the hall. Your authority. The room erupted. Hundreds of species began shouting at once. Thousands of voices collided into chaos. Translators overloaded. Security systems activated. The assembly descended into panic. You cannot do that. Velkron's voice thundered through the chamber. His crystalline body flashed with bright colors. No species has ever withdrawn from the council. Jiwan met his gaze. For the first time, she smiled. A cold smile. A dangerous smile. Then humanity will be the first. The room fell silent. Even Therax stopped speaking. Jiwan calmly gathered her documents. The two human diplomats rose beside her. Therax finally stood. His confidence was beginning to crack. "This is foolish." His voice sounded smaller now. "You are children pretending to understand politics." No response. "If you leave this chamber, you lose the protection of council law." Still no response. "Your worlds will be vulnerable." Jiwan finally turned. Her eyes locked onto his. "We do not need your protection." Every word landed like a hammer. "We never did." The reptilian froze. "What we needed," a long pause, "was justice." The silence became absolute. "And you have made it clear that justice does not exist here." No one spoke. No one moved. Jiwan turned and walked toward the massive exit doors. Her footsteps echoed through the chamber. Slow, certain, final. The other human diplomats followed. Behind them, 847 civilizations watched in stunned silence. For the first time in galactic history, humanity walked away, and deep in the darkness beyond Council space, hidden fleets were already receiving the news. The Council believed it had just lost an annoying member species. What it had actually lost was the last opportunity to avoid what came next. "You will regret this," the called after her. "Your species will beg to return." Chan paused at the door and looked back one last time. "No, Counselor. You will regret that you never took us seriously." The doors closed behind the human delegation, sealing with a hiss of pressurized air. Inside the hall, chaos erupted as counselors shouted and argued. Outside, Shiwan allowed herself one moment of uncertainty before she straightened her shoulders and walked toward the docking bay where the human shuttle waited. In orbit around the council sphere, Captain Daejo Kim received the signal. The diplomatic talks had ended. He looked at his crew and gave the order they had all been waiting for. "Send the message to all human fleets. Protocol severance is active. It is time." The emergency session began 6 hours after the humans left. The council hall was packed with delegates who had rushed back from their quarters. Many of them still seemed to think the whole situation was amusing. Laughter echoed through the chamber, as various species shared their opinions on humanity's dramatic exit. "I give them 3 cycles before they come crawling back," a force-armed delegate from the Koran Empire announced loudly. "Humans are emotional creatures. They will realize their mistake soon enough." High Arbiter Velcro tried to restore order, his crystalline form pulsing with different colors to signal his displeasure. "The situation is unprecedented. We must treat it with appropriate seriousness." But even he did not sound particularly worried. In 50,000 years of galactic history, the Council had never faced a genuine challenge to its authority. Species joined the Council. They did not leave it. Councillor Theix stood and addressed the assembly. His reptilian features were twisted in an expression of satisfaction. "I propose we send a military fleet to human space, not to wage war, but to remind them of reality. A show of force will bring them back to negotiations within a week." "How large a force?" another councillor asked. 500 ships should be sufficient," Thea replied. "We do not need to actually fight them. Just the sight of our armada will be enough." A military advisor, a tall being covered in thick armor plating, activated a holographic display. It showed the known human military capabilities. "According to our intelligence, humanity possesses approximately 200 military vessels. Most are outdated designs based on technology they purchased from council manufacturers 3 decades ago. Their largest ship mass is barely 500,000 tons." The advisor continued, pulling up more data. "Human weapons are primarily kinetic and chemical-based. They have no antimatter capabilities, no quantum shielding, and no jump drives of their own design. In a direct confrontation, we estimate complete human military collapse within 3 solar weeks." Murmurs of approval spread through the hall. This was what they wanted to hear. The humans were children throwing a tantrum, nothing more. But not everyone was convinced. In a corner of the assembly, Delegate Curion observed the proceedings with growing unease. His insectoid eyes could see in multiple spectrums, and he had learned to read the emotional states of many species. Something felt wrong. He had met Ambassador Jiwan several times over the years. She was not impulsive. She was not emotional in the way they described. Every move she made was calculated. If she had walked out of the council, she had done so for a reason. And if humanity was truly as weak as the advisor suggested, why would they risk provoking the entire galactic community? Curion's people had been minor members of the council for centuries. They understood what it meant to be dismissed and underestimated. He had seen the footage from Nuju before the council deleted it from official records. He had counted the bodies while the council debated the composition of the punitive fleet. Kurion quietly left the chamber. He made his way to his private quarters and activated a secure communication channel. It would be traced eventually, and he would face consequences. But some things were more important than his career. The message was simple. They are sending 500 ships to your space. Soon Dominion leads the fleet. You have 4 days before they arrive. Meanwhile, in the depths of human space, far from any known shipping lanes, Admiral Heejin Choi stood on the bridge of a facility that did not officially exist. The structure was built into an asteroid, hidden from scanners by layers of stealth technology that humanity had spent decades developing. She was a small woman with gray streaks in her hair, but her presence commanded absolute respect. She had fought in every major human conflict for the past 30 years. She had seen friends die because their ships were inferior. She had watched colonies burn because humanity's weapons were too weak to defend them. Protocol severance is active. Her tactical officer reported, all human fleets have withdrawn to designated coordinates. Civilian evacuation of border worlds is 70% complete. Good, Admiral Hunan replied. And the Council's response? They are assembling a fleet. Intelligence suggests 500 ships, mostly solely in design. They expect this to be a simple intimidation mission. Admiral Heejin allowed herself a cold smile. They still think we are the same desperate species that begged to join their council 40 years ago. She walked to the main viewport. Outside in the darkness of space, hundreds of ships floated in perfect formation. But these were not the outdated vessels the council knew about. These were something else entirely. Dr. Min Ho Yoon entered the bridge carrying a datapad. He was young for someone in his position, barely 40, but he was brilliant. Admiral, the new destroyers are ready for deployment. All systems are testing within acceptable parameters, and the indomitable. Admiral Heejun asked. Commander Unji reports full readiness. She is eager to test the new systems in actual combat. She will have her chance soon enough. What the Council did not know was that 15 years ago, a human exploration vessel had discovered something impossible. Deep in an uncharted region of space, they found a derelict ship. It was not from any known species. It was old beyond measure, and its technology was far beyond anything the Council had ever achieved. Humanity had spent 15 years reverse engineering that technology in secret. They had built new ships, developed new weapons, and trained in isolation. They had planned for the day when the Council's arrogance would finally go too far. Back in the Council Hall, the vote was called. 537 species voted in favor of sending the punitive fleet. 243 abstained. Only 67 voted against it. It was not even close. Councillor Thorax was given command authority over the operation. He stood before the assembly and declared, "Within 2 weeks, the humans will be back in this hall, begging forgiveness, and we will grant it, after extracting the appropriate penalties. Let this be a lesson to any species that thinks they can defy the Council." Road. The assembly erupted in approval. Only a few delegates sat in silence, wondering if they were making a terrible mistake. Across human space, the colonies went dark. All communication signals stopped. Beacons shut down. Trade routes were abandoned. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like humanity was hiding in fear, shutting down their civilization to avoid the coming storm. The Council interpreted this as confirmation of their assessment. The humans were terrified. They were probably trying to hide their most valuable worlds, hoping the Council would not find them. It was pathetic, really. But that was not what was happening at all. The blackout was intentional. Humanity was moving every civilian to secure locations. They were positioning their new fleet in strategic formations. They were preparing for war in a way the Council could not even imagine. Admiral Heejin watched the reports coming in. Every piece was moving into place. Every calculation had been checked and rechecked. Humanity had one chance to prove they were not the weak species the Council believed them to be. One chance to show that respect was not given freely, but had to be earned. "Send the signal to all fleet commanders," she ordered. "When the Council fleet arrives, we do not negotiate. We do not warn. We demonstrate exactly what happens when you push humanity too far." The Solian Armada began assembling at their staging point. 500 ships of various classes. Crew members boarded vessels with the casual confidence of soldiers who had never known defeat. They joked about how quickly this would be over. Some even made bets about how many hours it would take for the humans to surrender. None of them knew they were sailing toward a battle that would change galactic history forever. None of them realized that humanity had been waiting for this moment. None of them understood that sometimes the quiet species, the dismissed species, the underestimated species, were the most dangerous of all. The Kepler Traverse was a strategic location in space, where multiple hyperspace routes intersected. Control of the Traverse meant control of trade and military movement through an entire sector. The Council had held it for thousands of years without challenge. Fleet Admiral Kyung-Soo Baek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. It was a massive vessel, over 3 kilometers long, covered in weapons batteries that could level cities. He had commanded fleets for 30 years, and never lost a battle. This mission seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. 500 ships against 200 obsolete human vessels, he muttered to his second-in-command. This will be over before lunch. His fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. It was a beautiful sight. Hundreds of warships appearing simultaneously, their hulls gleaming in the light of nearby stars. Weapon systems powered up with satisfying hums. Shields activated, creating shimmering fields of energy around each vessel. Then the scanners picked up something unexpected. A single ship waited for them in the Traverse. Sensors report 1 human vessel, the tactical officer announced. Identification reads as HDFS Indomitable. Mass approximately 800,000 tons. No escort vessels detected. Kyoyong frowned. 1 ship. Are their sensors broken? Do they not see our fleet? Sir, we are receiving a transmission. On the main screen, a human woman appeared. She wore a dark uniform with simple insignia. Her expression was calm, almost bored. This was Commander Unji, though Kyung-Soo did not know her name yet. Council Fleet, you have entered human-controlled space without authorization. Turn back now, she said flatly. Laughter erupted across the bridge. The audacity of it was almost impressive. 1 ship telling 500 to retreat. Kyo Yong-soo activated his own transmission. I am Fleet Admiral Kyung-soo Baek, of the Solian Dominion, commanding this council armada, under the authority of the Galactic Council. You will power down your weapons, and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel. You have 5 minutes to comply. Commander Unja's expression did not change. I will give you the same courtesy you gave us at Nuju, the same mercy you showed our research stations, the same justice you delivered through your council. And what is that? Kyunggu asked, amused despite himself. None, Unji replied. Then the transmission cut for a moment. Nothing happened. Then the Indomitable's weapons came online, and Kyunggu realized this was not a standard human ship. The tactical display lit up with warnings. Energy readings were spiking to impossible levels. The human vessel was generating more power than should have been possible for something its size. Sir, their power signature is off the charts. It does not match any known human reactor design. All ships, open fire, Kyunggu ordered. Destroy that vessel. 50 ships in the vanguard fired simultaneously. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes crossed the void. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The space around the Indomitable erupted in explosions and light. When the sensors cleared, the human ship was still there. Its shields had not even flickered. Impossible, someone whispered. Then the Indomitable fired back. What emerged from its weapons ports was not conventional energy fire. It was focused antimatter, contained in magnetic fields and accelerated to near light speed. The beams crossed the distance in microseconds, where they touched council ships. Matter simply ceased to exist. Entire sections of vessels vanished, leaving gaping holes that vented atmosphere and crew into space. 12 ships died in the first 3 seconds. Evasive maneuvers, Kyunggu shouted. All ships scatter and returned fire. But the human ship moved like nothing they had ever seen. It accelerated at speeds that should have crushed any crew into paste. It changed direction without slowing, and its weapons fired in a continuous stream, and each shot found its target. The Council fleet shields, considered the best in the galaxy, proved useless. The anti-adder beams passed through them like they were not even there. Armor plating, reinforced hulls, redundant systems, none of it mattered. When the human weapons struck, ships died. Young Tactical Officer Jin Woo-seo sat at his station, on the Indomitable feeding targeting data to the weapons systems. He had trained for 3 years on this ship. He knew every system, every capability. He had wondered if they would ever get to use them for real. Targets acquiring, he reported calmly. Firing solution locked on cruiser group Theta. Fire, Commander Unji ordered. The antimatter cannon spoke again. 5 more council ships exploded in rapid succession. But antimatter was not the Indomitable's only weapon. From its launch tubes came kinetic kill vehicles. They were simple in concept. Masses of dense metal accelerated to 90% light speed. When they struck, the kinetic energy was devastating. One hit could split a battleship in half. The Council fleet tried to adapt. Ships moved into defensive formations. They coordinated their fire, focusing hundreds of weapons on the human vessel at once. The space around the Indomitable became a storm of energy and explosions. And still, the human ship's shields held. "How is this possible?" Kyunggu demanded. "What kind of shielding is that?" His science officer was frantically scanning the human vessel. "Sir, it appears to be quantum-based. The shield exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Our weapons are only hitting it in 3-dimensional space, but the shield is distributing the impact across higher dimensions. We would need completely different weapon configurations to penetrate it." "Then configure them, sir. That would take months of research and development." They did not have months. They did not even have minutes. 30 ships had been destroyed in the first 5 minutes of battle. Then 40. Then 60. The Council fleet outnumbered the human vessel 500 to 1. But it did not matter. Numbers were meaningless when your weapons could not hurt the enemy, and their weapons destroyed you with every shot. "Sir, we are receiving scanner alerts," the tactical officer called out. "Multiple contacts emerging from stealth. Dozens of human ships surrounding our position," the display updated. Around the Council fleet, human destroyers were decloaking, revealing themselves for the first time. They were smaller than the Indomitable, but they carried the same terrible weapons. They had been there the entire time, invisible, and waiting. Kyunggu felt something he had not experienced in 30 years of warfare. Fear. All ships. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Retreat. Retreat. But the humans had anticipated that too. The human destroyers fired not at the Council ships but into space around them. They were creating gravity wells, disrupting the fabric of space-time. Ships trying to jump to hyperspace found their drives failing, unable to generate the necessary fields. They were trapped. The battle became a massacre. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, each one picking targets and eliminating them with ruthless efficiency. The Council crews fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against technology they could not counter. Some ships tried to surrender, lowering their shields and broadcasting ceasefire signals. The human vessels ignored them and kept firing. Commander Yunji had meant what she said. The same mercy given at Nuju. None at all. Kyunggu watched his fleet die around him. Ships he had commanded for years. Crews he had trained himself. All of them burning, exploding, disappearing into clouds of debris. "Sir, we have to go," his second-in-command urged. With 50 ships left out of 500, Kyunggu gave the order he never thought he would speak. "All remaining vessels, disengage and scatter. Get to hyperspace any way you can. We are done here." The surviving ships broke formation and fled in different directions, desperately trying to get far enough from the human gravity wells to jump away. Some made it. Most did not. The Eternal Dominance with its powerful drives managed to escape. As it jumped into hyperspace, Kyunggu took one last look at the tactical display. The Kepler Traverse was full of wreckage and bodies. 470 Council ships destroyed. The human fleet had not lost a single vessel. Commander Yunji watched the last enemy ships flee. Her crew was silent, processing what they had just done. For years, they had prepared for this moment. Now it was real. "Damage report," she ordered. "Shields at 87%. All weapon systems nominal. No casualties." She nodded slowly. "Send the battle data to Fleet Command, and make sure it gets broadcast on all Council channels. Let them see what happened here." Within hours, the footage reached every corner of civilized space. The Council's invincible armada had been destroyed by a force they had dismissed as primitive. The images showed Council ships burning while human vessels moved untouched through the carnage. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Everything they knew about military power had just been proven wrong. The humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They had been hiding their true strength, waiting for the moment when the Council's arrogance would give them the perfect opportunity to demonstrate it. And in the Council halls for the first time in 50,000 years, the assembled delegates felt something they had not experienced since the ancient wars. They felt afraid. The council chamber had never been so quiet. 800 delegates sat in their seats, watching the footage play for the third time. They watched their mighty fleet burn. They watched council ships explode like toys. They watched 30 ships flee in panic while human destroyers hunted them down one by one. High Orbiter Velcro sat motionless, his crystalline body dim and gray. He had personally assured the assembly that the human problem would be resolved quickly. He had called them a minor species. Now he watched that minor species destroy 470 council warships without losing a single vessel of their own. Councillor Thera was not in his seat. He had locked himself in his quarters, refusing to face the assembly after his confident predictions had proven so catastrophically wrong. His people, the Solian Dominion, had led the fleet. They had suffered the greatest losses. His political career was over, but that seemed like a minor concern compared to what was happening to the council itself. A delegate from the Hexian cluster stood, his voice shaking. How is this possible? Where did they get such technology? Our intelligence said they were decades behind us. Our intelligence was clearly wrong. Another delegate snapped. The question is, what do we do now? Before anyone could answer, every screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. This was not authorized. Someone had hacked into the council's communication systems, something that should have been impossible. A human face appeared on the screens. She was middle-aged with gray hair pulled back in a simple style. She wore civilian clothes, not a military uniform. This was Chancellor Yuna Han, the elected leader of Earth's government. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice calm but firm. For 40 years, humanity has tried to work within your system. We followed your laws. We paid your fees. We respected your authority. And in return you allowed our people to be exploited, enslaved, and murdered. She paused, letting the words sink in. You called us emotional. You called us primitive. You called us a minor species. But we are human, and we will not be treated as less than any other living beings. The screen split, showing dozens of different images. Each one was evidence of council crimes against humanity. Massacre sites, slave markets where humans were sold openly, corporate records showing the intentional targeting of civilian populations, council communications approving the destruction of human settlements. These are not business disputes, Chancellor Yuna continued. These are war crimes. These are atrocities, and you did nothing to stop them because you did not consider us worthy of protection. She leaned forward, her eyes hard. So we stopped asking for your protection. We protected ourselves, and what you saw at Kepler Traverse is only the beginning. Our fleets are positioned throughout council space. We have weapons you cannot defend against. We have technology you do not understand. And we are done being victims. The transmission continued for 20 minutes, detailing every crime, every injustice, every time the council had failed humanity. When it ended, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Some species were angry, claiming the human broadcast was propaganda. Others were frightened, realizing that if humans were treated this way, their own species might be next. The smaller species, the ones with little power, suddenly saw the council in a new light. Ambassador Sora Lim watched the chaos from a hidden location. She had been a diplomat once, but now she led humanity's information warfare division. The broadcast was only the first step. Over the next days, she would leak more documents, more evidence, more uncomfortable truths about how the council really operated. The goal was not just to defend humanity, it was to break the council's unity, and it was working. Delegate Karan stood in the assembly and spoke for the first time in years. His insectoid voice was translated for all to hear. The humans speak truth. I have seen the evidence myself. I have watched this council dismiss their legitimate grievances for decades. If we are honest, we know that many of us have suffered similar treatment, but we were too afraid to speak against the council's power. Sit down, someone shouted. You betray the council with such words. No, Karan replied firmly. The council betrayed its own principles long ago. It has become a tool for the strong to exploit the weak. The humans have simply refused to accept that exploitation any longer. Other delegates began to speak, some in support, some in anger. The assembly was fracturing along lines that had always existed, but were never openly acknowledged. The strong species who benefited from the current system, and the weak species who suffered under it. In the hours that followed, 47 species sent secret communications to humanity, requesting private negotiations. They wanted to know if humanity would accept allies. They wanted to know if there was an alternative to the Council's authority. Admiral He Zhen received the messages and smiled coldly. Send the same response to all of them. Tell them we are willing to discuss mutual defense agreements, but only with species that commit to equal rights for all sapient beings. No more exploitation, no more slavery, no more treating other species as resources to be used. Meanwhile, Counselor Thera had emerged from his quarters, but his humiliation had transformed into something more dangerous: rage. He could not accept what had happened, could not accept that humans had beaten him, had made him look like a fool in front of the entire galaxy. He called a secret meeting with several other powerful counselors. They gathered in a private chamber, away from recording devices and listening systems. We cannot let this stand. The X hissed, the humans have embarrassed us, killed our people, and now they are turning our own members against us. If we do not act decisively, the council will collapse. What do you propose? Asked a massive crustacean delegate. Our fleet failed. Our weapons are useless against their shields. How do we fight them? Well, our weapons are useless. These eyes gleamed with malice. We use the forbidden weapons, the ones sealed away after the ancient wars. Dimensional disruptors, reality breakers, weapons that do not care about shields or armor, because they unmake the very space the enemy occupies. The other counselors looked uncomfortable. Those weapons had been banned for good reason. They were indiscriminate. They were unstoppable. They could destroy entire solar systems if not carefully controlled. That would violate every treaty we have signed. The crustacean said slowly. It would make us monsters. Better to be living monsters than dead fools. Theric snapped. The humans have shown they do not respect council law. Why should we limit ourselves with laws when fighting them? But before they could decide, alarms began blaring throughout the council sphere. Every screen showed the same emergency alert. Human ships had been detected, not near the sphere, but above it. A full fleet had somehow bypassed all their defenses and now floated in orbit around the council's home base. High Orbiter Velcro rushed to the command center. On the screens, he could see dozens of human warships, their weapons armed but not firing. They were just sitting there, a silent threat that needed no words. Captain Dejo Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the council sphere. He had led this fleet through secret routes, using stealth technology that made them invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. The message was clear. If humans could reach the council's home, they could reach anywhere. Send the message, he ordered. Below, every counselor received the same transmission. This is Captain Dejo Kim of the Human Defense Forces. We are not here to attack. We are here to demonstrate that your defenses are meaningless against us. We could have destroyed this sphere. We chose not to. Remember that when you debate whether to escalate this conflict, the fleet remained for 1 hour, then vanished back into stealth. But the damage to Council credibility was complete if they could not even defend their own headquarters. How could they claim to protect anyone else? Over the next days, more species withdrew from Council sessions. Some announced they were leaving the Council entirely. Others simply stopped sending representatives. The unity that had lasted 50,000 years was crumbling. Delegate Kurion formally proposed dissolving the Council and creating a new assembly based on actual equality rather than power hierarchies. To everyone's surprise, over 300 species voted in favor of at least discussing the idea. Councillor Drennick, an amphibious delegate who had always been moderate, stood and addressed the publicly. You led us into this disaster. You assured us the humans were weak. You pushed for military action when diplomacy might have worked. You are unfit to hold your position. The Rose, his scales flushed dark with anger. I will not be lectured by lesser species. The Council needs strength, not weakness. If you will not support what must be done, then I will do it myself. He stormed from the chamber, and security forces moved to follow him. But it was too late. They had already sent the authorization codes to access the forbidden weapons stockpiles. He would show the humans what real power looked like. He would show them all. But Admiral He Zhen had been expecting something like this. Human intelligence had identified the weapons stockpiles months ago. When the codes activated the systems, they found empty vaults. The weapons were gone, taken by human special forces who had infiltrated Council facilities weeks earlier. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The old order was dying, but what would replace it remained unclear. Only one thing was certain. Humanity had changed everything, and there was no going back. High Arbiter Velcross stood alone in his private chamber, watching the galaxy burn through 1,000 screens. Not literally burning, but the effect was the same. The Galactic Council, which had stood for 50,000 years, was falling apart in a matter of weeks. 216 species had formally withdrawn from the Council. Another 300 had stopped sending representatives or paying membership fees. The remaining species were split between those who wanted to fight humanity at any cost and those who wanted to negotiate before things got worse. The Council had no military left. After Kepler Traverse, most species had recalled their fleets to defend their own territories. No one wanted to be the next to face human weapons. Even the great military powers, species that had ruled through strength for millennia, suddenly seemed vulnerable. Velcro had received reports about Counselor the Theol, had tried to seize the forbidden weapons and use them against Earth itself. When he found the vaults empty, he had attempted a coup, trying to take control of Council forces by declaring a state of emergency. It had failed. Counselor Drennick and others had arrested him with the support of Council security. Thorax now sat in a cell screaming about betrayal and weakness, but nobody was listening anymore. He had led them into disaster, and they would not follow him further into destruction. A message arrived on Velcro's personal channel. It was from Earth, from Chancellor Unahan herself, High Arbiter. The message began, "Humanity does not seek the destruction of the Council or the galactic community. We seek justice. We seek equality. We seek the recognition that all sapient species deserve the same rights and protections. If you are willing to discuss these principles in good faith, we are willing to negotiate. But the negotiations will happen on Earth. You will come to us." Velcro felt something crack inside him. Come to Earth. The Council had never traveled to petition a member species. Member species came to the Council. That was how it had always worked. The symbolism of what she was asking was staggering, but what choice did he have? The Council was dying. If he refused, it would simply fracture completely, and humanity would form a new alliance without them. At least if he went to Earth, there was a chance to salvage something from the ruins. He called an emergency session of the remaining Council members. When he proposed traveling to Earth to negotiate, the chamber erupted in argument. Some called it surrender. Others called it pragmatism. The debate lasted for hours. Finally, a vote was called. By a narrow margin, the Council agreed to send a delegation to Earth. Velcro would lead it along with 50 other representatives from various species. They would go to humanity and try to find a way forward. 3 days later, the Council delegation arrived in Earth's solar system. Their ships were met by human escorts that guided them to Earth orbit. Looking down at the blue and green planet, many of the delegates felt a strange sensation. This was supposed to be a primitive world, a minor species. Yet here they were, coming to ask for terms. They landed at a facility in Seoul, one of Earth's major cities. The building was impressive, but not overwhelming. It spoke of a civilization that was confident, but not boastful. Human officials greeted them with professional courtesy. Neither warm nor hostile, Ambassador Jiswon Park met them at the entrance. She had been the last person to walk out of Council chambers, and now she was the first to welcome them back into negotiations. The symmetry was not lost on anyone. "Welcome to Earth," she said simply. "Chancellor Yuna is ready to meet with you." They were led to a conference room with large windows overlooking the city. It was nothing like the Grand Council chambers with their ancient technology and symbolic grandeur. This was a functional space, designed for work, not intimidation. Chancellor Yuna entered with a small team. She sat across from Velcro and the other delegates. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then she began. "For 40 years, humanity asked to be heard. For 40 years, you refused. So we stopped asking. We showed you that respect is not given freely. It is earned. And now you are here, because you have no other choice." Velcro's crystalline body shifted through several colors, expressing emotions that only his species could fully interpret. Finally, he spoke. "What are your terms?" Yuna smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "First, the Council as it exists will be dissolved. It has proven itself incapable of providing justice to all species." Several delegates protested, but Velcro raised a hand for silence. "Second, a new galactic assembly will be formed based on equal representation. Every species, regardless of size or power, will have the same vote and the same voice. The strong will no longer make rules that only the weak must follow. That is impossible. A delegate objected. Some species are more advanced, more capable of leadership. You cannot expect primitive species to have equal say in galactic policy. Captain Deho Kim, who stood behind the Chancellor, spoke for the first time. 40 years ago, you called us primitive. You said we were incapable of understanding galactic complexities. Then we destroyed your fleet with technology you do not have and cannot counter. Perhaps you should reconsider who is actually primitive. The delegate fell silent. Yuna continued. Third, all forms of slavery and forced servitude will be banned across all member territories. Species that refuse to comply will face sanctions and, if necessary, military intervention. You cannot enforce such a rule across the entire galaxy, Velcro said. We can, Admiral Heejun said, stepping forward. And we will. We have already made alliances with 200 species who support these principles. Our combined fleets are larger than what remains of Council forces. We will enforce it. Dr. Minho Yoon activated a holographic display. It showed a new type of communication system based on the technology humanity had reverse-engineered. Fourth, we will share our faster-than-light communication technology with all species that join the new assembly. No more delays of weeks or months for messages to travel. Real-time communication across the galaxy. No more excuses for not knowing what happens in distant territories. This caused a stir. FTL communication had been theoretically possible but never achieved. If humans could actually deliver on this promise, it would change everything about how galactic civilization functioned. Fifth, Yuna said the new assembly will establish a justice system that actually investigates crimes and punishes wrongdoers regardless of their species or power. The exploitation that humanity suffered will not be allowed to happen to any species ever again. She leaned forward. These are not negotiable points. These are the minimum requirements for humanity to participate in any galactic community. Accept them, and we can move forward together. Refuse them, and we will build a new civilization with those species who share our values. Either way, the old council is finished. The delegates whispered among themselves. Some were angry, feeling that humanity was dictating terms like conquerors. Others were thoughtful, realizing that what humanity was proposing was actually fair, even if it meant giving up their privileged positions. Delegate Kurion spoke up. I support these terms. My species has waited centuries for someone to challenge the Council's corruption. If it takes humanity to make it happen, so be it. Councillor Drennick nodded slowly. The Council failed. We all know it. These terms are harsh, but they are not unjust. I also support them one by one. Other delegates added their voices. Not all of them, but enough. The momentum was shifting. Velcro was silent for a long time. He looked around the table at the faces of species from across the galaxy. He thought about 50,000 years of history, of traditions and power structures that seemed eternal. And he realized that nothing was eternal. Everything changed. Eventually, humanity has proven its strength, he said finally. But more importantly, you have proven your principles. You could have simply conquered us, taken what you wanted by force. Instead, you are offering partnership based on justice that is worth more than any military victory. He stood, his crystalline body shifting to colors that indicated acceptance and resignation. I agree to your terms. The Galactic Council is dissolved as of this moment. Let us begin building something better. The other delegates, even those who had objected, formally accepted. They had no real choice. But as the shock wore off, many realized they had been given a chance to be part of something historic. A chance to create a galaxy that was actually fair, not just powerful. 5 years later, the new Galactic Assembly met in its headquarters, a rotating location that moved between different species' homeworlds to prevent any one planet from becoming too central. The old Council sphere was maintained as a museum, a reminder of what happened when power became more important than justice. Ambassador Jiwon Park stood before the assembly as humanity's representative. She was older now, with more gray in her hair, but her eyes were as sharp as ever. She proposed a new initiative to help developing species advance their technology without exploitation. The proposal passed with overwhelming support. Captain Daejo Kim commanded the Assembly's peacekeeping fleet, a joint force drawn from 100 different species. They had just stopped a corporation from illegally mining and protected territory. The corporation had tried to bribe the inspectors. It had not worked. They were now facing justice in the assembly courts, and their assets had been seized. Admiral Heejan had retired from active military service, but she trained the next generation of officers at the Assembly's military academy. Students from dozens of species learned from her, and she taught them all the same lesson. The moment you forget that, you become what we fought against. Dr. Minho Yoon led the technology sharing initiative, helping species upgrade their capabilities while ensuring they understood the responsibility that came with advanced weapons. Some species struggled with the concept that great power required great restraint, but they were learning. Counselor Thera remained in prison, serving a life sentence for war crimes and attempted genocide. Sometimes younger species visited him, curious to see the being who had represented everything wrong with the old system. He still insisted he had done nothing wrong. That strength was all that mattered. Nobody listened. Delegate Kurion had become one of the Assembly's most respected mediators, helping to resolve disputes between species before they escalated into violence. His insectoid features had become a symbol of the Assembly's diversity and commitment to all voices being heard. The galaxy was not perfect. There were still disputes, still crime, still species that tried to exploit others. But now there was a system that actually tried to stop it. Now there were consequences for the powerful who abused their strength. Now every species, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, had a voice. Chancellor Yuna Han gave a speech on the 5th anniversary of the Assembly's founding. She stood before representatives from over 600 species and spoke simply. 5 years ago, humanity was told we did not matter. We were dismissed, exploited, and attacked. We could have responded with pure vengeance. We could have tried to dominate others the way we were dominated. Instead, we chose to build something better. We chose to create a galaxy where what happened to us can never happen again. She paused, looking around at the diverse assembly. This is not humanity's galaxy. This is everyone's galaxy. We are all equal partners in building a civilization worth being part of. That is the future we fought for. That is the future we will continue to defend. The assembly rose in approval, hundreds of species acknowledging the truth of her words. Outside the windows, human ships patrolled alongside vessels from a dozen other species. Ensuring that the hard-won peace remained intact, Ambassador Jiwon watched from the side and allowed herself a small smile. They had come so far from that day when she walked out of the council chambers. They had shown that sometimes the only way to be heard was to stop asking for permission to speak. They had proven that respect was not about asking nicely, but about showing you could not be dismissed. And most importantly, they had demonstrated that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or technology, it was their refusal to accept injustice. Even when the entire galaxy told them to be quiet and accept their place, the galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way, and it would never forget.